Hello everybody and welcome to another time-lapse painting. Thank you so much for joining me. This painting is called Fishing Off the Banks of the River. This is what it looks like when it's done. As you can see, it's very textured like all my paintings, but this one's a little bit more line oriented and small detail oriented. You can check out the grass. You'll be able to see how I did those later. The inspiration for this painting was actually an older painting I made, and I used more of a gray and pink palette for that one. That was more of an experimental painting. Made that one like 5 years ago maybe, and that's where I developed kind of the way I do foliage and trees. So I wanted to do that again, and I brought it to this painting. This time I didn't do only one tree, I added a bunch of trees, and then I decided to also add some tall grass and a little river just to complete the circuit or the composition. As you can see, I went through the clouds fairly quickly. Not kind of just wanted them to kind of sandwich between the trees and the sky to create kind of a I don't know, a more of a separate composition from the sky, just to have the sky completely separate from the green, to have that border of the clouds in between. But anyway, here I am doing an under layer of texture, and also by doing this I kind of know how I'm gonna create the movement in the little layer, smaller details when I add later. I know how I'm gonna add them to there. Right away I go into adding little details into the grass areas. Usually can't see these, but they help just to if I ever miss a spot or leave a spot open, these little under areas will protrude through the bottom, or from the bottom up, and they become very valuable later on. I go then into the what do you call them? The trunks and the branches. I'm using this dark brownish red. Looks a little bit more red in real life than in the video. The reason I chose this color is because I saw these Portuguese trees that have a very like bronze, dark bronze, like mahogany color to them. I really like that color, so I went with it. I've been doing that for a lot of the trees that I've been doing recently. I just like this like darker red, brown, kind of like more like oxide red. Anyway, usually if I don't do this, I'll add more of a gray, like more realistic tree color, or more common tree color. This tree color is not really that common. But I really liked it. Also, one cool thing about it is also that it contrasts very well with the green, so it creates more vibrant and atmosphere. Here I go with the farther back tones. You notice I was using more of a blue color, and I kind of switched the tone a lot as I go through, adding the smaller details. As you can see, I'm using a brush for this. Later on for the grass, you'll see me using a piping bag or a cake decorator. I've mentioned it a lot in many of my videos now that I've started employing that tool. It's very nice. Speeds many things up that I would have taken me way longer, so I really enjoy using that thing. I even tried to get a job as a cake decorator, a part-time job, just to get good with it, but unfortunately nobody hired me. That was odd. You'd think people would hire you for such an easy job. Well, maybe that's not easy. Maybe they... Whatever. We'll move on. Excuse me. I have a bit of a cold as I'm talking right now. As you can see, I'm kind of going for the lighter spots right now. Just throwing in the little foliage, kind of leafy things for these what I would call maybe oak trees. These are like the more lighter areas. Later on I'll darken the paint and add the more darker areas, obviously. One of my favorite painters, is Ivan Shishkin. Have you ever heard of him? So I definitely drew a lot of inspiration from him. And I love his realistic and highly technical paintings. Very, very talented man he was. I think back in like the mid 1800s. But things have changed since then. And art takes a bit of a less traditional approach nowadays, and more of a avant-garde slash more interested in creativity than execution and technique. Although, to be honest, there's been a kind of explosion of clever art, which is a little bit on the nose to say. It's like you're trying to, instead of creating like a work of art that can withstand the test of time, you're kind of just like creating viral material. It's almost like viral art. Doesn't really have a lifespan. It just gets attention. So there's been a huge explosion of that, which is kind of depressing. Not depressing, but just cheapens the art world, in my opinion. But I guess everybody's gotta make money somehow, so if it works for you, do it, I guess. You know, let's say everything is art and it's subjective, but I disagree with that. I don't think art is really all that subjective. You know it when you see it, and don't let other people tell you that it's something, because usually if you gotta talk about it, then it's, the point of art, right, the visual art, is you see it and you know what it is. Unless it's maybe like a subject from the past that you actually need to know like certain facts about it, but usually like it should explain itself. If you gotta go through a thesis or a poetry about why this is that and that's this, then it's just like, what are we? We're no longer making visual art. It's kind of gimmicky and getting clever in a way that's not inducive to long-term value, or it's like a spending of time, not an investing of time when you make that kind of art. But I guess we gotta go through every iteration before we realize that what makes sense and what doesn't. Excuse the barking, it's my dogs. I'm not against any of these art forms. I just don't like when I have to hear somebody tell me why something is the way it is. Because if you can explain it in words, then you should also be able to explain it in image in your painting. So it shouldn't really require an explanation. Now you're trying to like trick me into thinking that what the piece of art you made is more special than it really is, when it's not. It's just like a lot of the modern art and a lot of this abstract work. It's abstract work, guys. Let's not make it more than it is. It's abstraction. It looks cool. I love it. When I started painting, abstract work was actually my favorite thing to paint. I really enjoyed it. I like this Vasily Kandinsky. He was one of my favorite, in fact, top 5 favorite artists to look at. I love abstract work, but I don't like it when people start talking more than it is. It's just, don't try to tell me it means more than it is, because it's really, the point of abstract work is to be non-representational. If you start talking more than that, it's, people. I remember when I was younger, I was looking, or about halfway through my career as an artist, I decided that, which was about like 6 years ago, I think I really made a go at this when I was 24, or I started to make a go at becoming an artist when I was 24. And I think when I was like 29, 30, it was like I thought I would be a good idea to maybe get into a grad school program. And every time I read any grad school program, especially here in America, it's all about like this like experimental. It's more about almost communicating what you're making than just making things, and it's a bit like it doesn't have to. Why we don't need to reinvent the wheel, guys. Just let it happen naturally. Like I developed my style very naturally. It took me years. You're not about to reinvent a style or something in what 3 years, 2 years of grad school, 3, and you gotta come up with feet. Like I paint more than grad students paint. I spend all my time doing it. It took me what 10 years to really get this good and to develop something new, or relatively new. So how can you create a new way of representing things in a grad school setting? Well, I'm talking about American grad schools where they have these 5-6 paragraphs explaining what they're doing, and then you read it and it's just vagueness upon vagueness, none of which really means anything. And if you take away the painting and just call it abstract or non-representational, you're closer to explaining it than what the hell they're saying. I don't want to sound mad. I was just disappointed because I wanted to go to grad school and I realized, oh, I can't go to grad school here. It's just I can't. Why pay money for something that I can just literally come up with my own? I guess maybe for the connections and for the eyes of other people, but I don't want other people's eyes. I trust my own, and I don't want other people's opinions because I know better. And that may sound somewhat narcissistic, but I wouldn't be where I am if I wasn't true. So, plus it's not like I'm in love with or like obsessed with the way I think. I know I've been wrong, but I feel like I would just be very annoyed with too much abstraction. Anyway, let's get back to the painting. I apologize. I just wanted to have a tangent there. Kind of fun to go off on tangents. Mostly because, as you can see, it's just a lot of repetitive work. A lot of dabbing. These little like what crescents that represent painting. Interestingly enough, right? All painting is abstract elements representing realistic things, and then how you blend them together, literally and figuratively. So here I'm painting this like little strains of grass in the background. That I can't get thinner, unfortunately, with the piping bag than I wish. Even no matter what I try, so I have to use the brush for this. But it's not too bad. Throw on a podcast, throw on some music. About an hour, 2 hours later, maybe not 2 hours, like an hour later, it's done. Here I am thinking about using those grass strains I do. I kind of like deciding the length of each strain to create the perspective, the correct length and perspective. Because it's fairly tall grass, because I was thinking like it's right at the bank of a river where the water is definitely getting onto the shore often, so the grass is getting tall because of it. Pretty soon we're jumping into the piping bag. One cool thing I've recently learned is that the human eye can distinguish green more different shades of green than any other color. So that's cool. It makes sense too, right? Because we've lived in most foliage is green, so to save ourselves and to help us hunt, being able to see different greens is quite helpful. Especially if you're eating plants, you might eat the wrong one by chance if you can't distinguish. One interesting thing also is that how we've There I go with the piping bag. Anyway, how we've grown different vegetables along the years, like how there's one parent plant to, for example, broccoli and cauliflower, and there's like 4 other plants that are, or 4 other vegetables that we get from this one plant, just depending on how we bred them. So some plants, the same plant was bred. One was bred for more cauliflower, one was bred for more broccoli, one was bred for more like the leaf, and in time like they diverged. I wonder if they were complaining about how that's not healthy for you 200 years ago or 100 years ago, whenever they started doing that. Just like we talk about non-GMO and GMO plants. I think GMO plants are good, personally. Might have a little bit of a learning curve until we get it right, but I think it's gonna just help us eat better food in the long run, and it's gonna be cheaper. And I think the organic thing is a little bit of a scam to get you to pay more for something that you don't need to pay more for. That's me. I don't have any proof. And that could be wrong, because I've eaten organic too, and they usually taste a little bit better. So just a sidetrack. Now, using the piping bag is quite satisfying. In fact, it's maybe one of the most satisfying parts because it moves quickly. Well, pardon me, that's just me changing music. Or maybe I was answering an email, I forget. Anyway, don't mind me doing that. But anyway, yeah, the piping bag is really satisfying because cover a lot of ground, and each stroke is just like, I don't know, just like, I guess it's like you feel like a sense of relationship with each stroke. And sometimes when I stare at the painting after I'm done, like I'll like, oh yeah, when I drew that, I'll think when I drew this grass strain or that grass strain, I'll remember what I was thinking about, or maybe what I was listening to, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's true with old paintings I make. Like I can look at a painting and kind of remember something that was happening in my life at that point. Oh yeah, one thing you may notice is how I go right here with the brush over. That's just me flattening the part that goes into the ground, or grows out of the ground, just because if I don't, it sticks up, and then the next line pops up and kind of creates a bulge that looks odd. So I kind of need to fix some of the lines because it's not always perfect. There's sometimes air bubbles, and if you ever do get to use a piping bag, get the smallest tips first. So like, and don't be afraid to spend a little bit more. The cheapest ones aren't that great, so it's definitely worth spending a little bit more money. And it's not even more money; it's maybe like $5 to $10 more on the better tips, and it makes a big difference. Like there, I ended up actually squeezing one of my tips more with the pliers to get so I can make it thinner. Anyway, here we are, adding the peoples. Funny thing for this, I just have a mirror in my room. I just stood in front of it and kind of just posed, and then took pictures of myself. It was kind of awkward to take pictures. I ended up having to put my camera on timed and just make it take pictures like every so many seconds of me standing in different poses. And then I got these. It's father and son. I've actually only been fishing 3 times in my life, but I do enjoy it, and I really look forward to doing it on a boat, or on like a little, one of those like fishing boats, in a calm area, some whiskey, some water. Whiskey and water is the perfect chaser. I read a book where whiskey and water was the chaser, or the thing they were drinking, and I never had it until whiskey and water until I read it. And I tried it, and I was like, oh, whiskey tastes better when you have watered down a little bit. It actually tastes way better when you water it down, depending on what level of taste you want. But yeah, watering it down makes you can actually taste the sweetness of it. So I always recommend that. We're just about done with this one. Probably like a minute left. I think the most challenging part of this painting was actually their faces. I could never get the brush to be thin enough. Even though I thickened the paste as much as I could, it just wasn't doing the thing. Here I am just kind of dragging the brush over the highlights with a little bit of yellow. And then I'm using an iridescent bluish green on top of the water to give it the little waves, or the little, like, what do you call it, the play that water has from a flowing stream. And that's about it, guys. Just now adding the darker areas and just kind of creating a little bit of contrast with lighter ones. And when it dries, you can see it looks a little bit different. And that's it, guys. Thank you for joining me. Take care.